Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Thunderstorm Podcast. This time around, we're talking to you guys about some open concepts, and by that I mean open worlds. We're going to be talking to you guys about the amazing things, the upsides, the downsides, and the not so amazing things about open world games, what they have meant for gaming as a whole, and also, I'm sure we're going to get into some hot takes about it. I'm Rin, and with me is Kaznarius.
Neku, you need to expand your horizons. The open world ends with you.
Pork Chopper.
Hi.
And as always, the unnamed guest.
In the future, can our openings be less, radical, dude? I feel like you're putting on too much of a radical dude voice.
I disagree. We need more radical dude, Rin.
I'm just feeling really excited about this topic.
You shouldn't.
Okay, let's get right into it. How do you guys feel about open world games? I know that there's a broad expanse of different beliefs on the topic, so I'm just going to hand it off to Kaznarius first, and then we'll probably see the unnamed guest and Pork Chopper get in a fight. Let's get into it.
Yeah, growing up, my favorite open world games were things like Infamous 2, like the Spider-Man games for their cool-ass city swinging and just like really neat setting and, going through this weird city with powers. Like, those were pretty fun. And I never could get into like fantasy open worlds. The Elder Scrolls, I've never been able to finish a game, and I've only played one for like maybe 5 hours at a time. I guess the one fantasy-ish open world game I've ever beaten and loved, like truly loved, is Breath of the Wild. I still think that's a great game, and we'll get into that later. I don't know. I can't pull up the paintbrush and say every open world game is shit or every open world game is good. It's far too broad of a topic, and we're gonna have to kind of chunk it down and just kind of divide and conquer, gentlemen. Who here thinks open world games suck ass? That's a loaded question. I already know who it is. Nameless guest, how do you feel about open world games?
I'm making a bit of a blanket statement, and it's not entirely true, because there are some open world games that do it pretty well. But in general, I dislike the concept of the open world game. This might largely just be because I'm tired of it. We keep getting them, and open world games are really big and really long, and there's a lot of walking through open fields just to get to the fun stuff. Like, it's a lot of like traversal padding. The main thing I would say about open world games is I find a lot of the best open world games are almost good in spite of their open world, not necessarily because of it. You mentioned Infamous in your thing, and yeah, I guess that's open world. It's like an open, city. You can go around everywhere. But the best parts of that game was the missions. It's just like individual, like fighting random thugs on the street wasn't that great because it was just kind of a random brawl and it was whatever. Also, once you complete the map, like once you do all the side missions, there's nothing to do in that map. It's totally empty. Outside of, I guess, collecting the blast shards, but that's not that fun and is actually incredibly tedious.
With the Infamous games, I will say that they become like way better the second you get your mobility power.
Yeah.
And you can just blast through the city.
One of the best things I find while playing an open world game is when you get a good traversal ability that lets you get past the bullshit of getting to the fun stuff. Because like one of the reasons the PS4 Spider-Man is really fun, it has its open world map. And its open world map isn't like that great. It has random like crimes that happen, but those are effectively just missions that you don't get to choose when they happen. They just show up. And later in the Miles Morales version, you can just choose to activate crimes whenever you want. So they are legitimately just missions. But actually moving through the city is pretty fun. Even if I didn't actually think the city itself was that fun, the swinging was good. So, I don't know. If you took that swinging and put it into like an actually like handcrafted environment that actually tested the player in a way, I think maybe it could actually be more fun.
quote from nameless guest, the black Spider-Man activates crimes.
Yeah, but yeah, no, that's the big problem with a lot of open world games is they're a big level select screen where, you know, you have fun activities throughout the map and you just got to go there. And the map itself isn't that great. Some try to do stuff with it. Like Breath of the Wild tried to have traversal be a really big thing, but at a certain point, you were just hunting shrines, and the traversal got a little annoying because I just kind of wanted to do the shrines and move on. And climbing a mountain is only so fun so many times, whereas the trials themselves are relatively varied in what you do in them, and thus could actually be quite interesting, unless it was a combat shrine, but that's a completely different thing. Oh, I guess that would lead me into the next thing of open world games are so big and expansive that they just recycle content. It's actually kind of ridiculous. Breath of the Wild has like 30 combat shrines of its 120 shrines? And all the combat shrines suck because they're the same shrine. So much recycled content in these games. It's just not that interesting. I could probably complain a lot longer, but I'll let other people talk for a bit.
I do think that those combat shrines are a little less bad once you like space them out in between actual puzzle shrines, but yes, I agree that there are quite a bit of them.
The problem would be that you can't decide which shrine you're going to get.
Sure.
Right? You could literally come across 5 combat shrines in a row and be like, oh, fuck, another combat shrine. Which is my thoughts every time I hit one of those combat shrines. They were terrible.
I do fundamentally disagree with you on Breath of the Wild's open world, though. Mainly because I believe that open world in particular is just really beautiful to look at. And a lot of the times I found that the process of trying to find a shrine was in itself a fun thing to do gameplay-wise.
Maybe I unfortunately found because of the game's climb everything, you could largely just, like, as soon as you get the radar ping, you could just kind of run in the straight direction. There were a few that were like hidden in a cave or something.
Sometimes
but a lot of the time you could just run straight forward, climb any wall that was in your way, and you would find it. And that's just because there's 120 of them, so obviously some of them are going to be incredibly easy to find, and only a few of them are going to be kind of iffy.
I know. I think you are still downplaying the interesting locales of the open world and the different settings and the different enemies you encounter throughout the regions and stuff like that.
Well, one, I would say that pretty vistas are only so nice for so long. At a certain point, I do stop caring a little bit. And two, Breath of the Wild has terrible enemy variety. There's 3 enemy types in the whole game. That's an exaggeration. There's more 5 to 6. But it's largely bokoblins, moblins, and Lizalfos.
That's true, but I found especially... I found a lot of times if I'd go off the beaten path, I'd find... I would find groups of enemies. I remember there's this one forest where it's raining and they constantly shoot you with electric arrows, and there's a shrine past them.
Yeah, well, that's because that's a crafted experience that they put in, right? That's not some random thing in the that was carefully designed.
Yeah.
And I like when things are carefully designed. And as I'm saying, a lot of that overworld is just nothing. And occasionally you find the pockets of quality. I like condensed pockets of quality instead of a sprawling map with I gotta walk 10 minutes to get to the next pocket of quality. Why? It doesn't add anything. I'm not that interested in it at a certain point. It's fun for the first little bit because you feel like you're exploring. But eventually that intrinsic joy does run out when you do it enough times. This depends on the person to person. I'm pretty extrinsically motivated, so the intrinsic stuff does wear on me eventually.
I'm definitely very pushed by the idea that the journey is sometimes the destination, it can definitely outstay its, like, that concept can definitely outstay its welcome at times. There are definitely a lot of games that are like, oh man, we're an open world and there's nothing in it, and it's, you go running for what feels like forever. Some of the earliest open world games suffered from it a lot, where you just had a game like Daggerfall, where you had this huge, I think, like, multiple times the size of the planet world to explore, but it was just nothing for a vast majority. Like, there definitely are cases like that. But I think for the most part, like, a quality open world game can provide an experience that no other genre of game really can, in my opinion, and create a really fun experience and create a really fun adventure with exploration and having these little journeys and having these little things, especially with some open world games where you have things like random events that occur in the world, where you have random things happening to you. No two experiences might be the same in that case. Like, say what you will about like a Skyrim. Every time you leave town, you don't know what you're going to get before you get to the next town. Now, that might be your game just crashes, but, you know, if it weren't for that, I would be saying, you know, well, a bunch of thieves came after me, or there were Imperial guards, or any number of things. Vampires, you have the DLC.
I guess the unfortunate thing is I find it with a lot of like open world random events that they're very simple. They can't really do much with it. Everything you just said there was you fight a group of enemies. I mean, this is just me bashing on Skyrim, but that just means you're fighting generic Skyrim dudes. They all kind of fight the same largely.
I mean, not necessarily fighting. It might be you free a prisoner, or it might be just a character that gives you a mission like, hey, go check out this town that you haven't been to yet. There's something here that you might want to check out.
Well, I was going
I
off
guess
the examples you just gave, but yeah. It's just, I felt it telling that the first three examples you gave were all you get attacked by a guys. It was only after I pointed that out that you thought of anything else.
Well, I can add points to your counterpoint, my guy.
I'm just saying that was the first thing that came to mind. But yeah, you need to be like really good about those random events, and even then, I'm sure people will, unless you program in a lot, someone's gonna get a repeat. Like, you're gonna hit the artifice eventually, which I mean actually doesn't bother me that much. I like artifice in my game, but you know, whatever.
I think it can also, like, at least around launch with with an open world game, you do have also that sense of mystery where it hasn't been fully explored yet. You haven't had everyone kind of like rip the game apart and figure out all the little itty bitty things. Like, one big one in the 2000s was, I think, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, where you had the Sasquatch that people had this rumor about, and it floated around for years because no one was actually sure if it was real or not. And stuff like that, where you had these mysteries in these open world games. And it's a little bit hurt by nowadays where everything gets ripped apart as quickly as possible. People are kind of chomping at the bit when a major release comes out, even like an open world game where there's hundreds of hours of content. There are people data mining that sometimes before the game even comes out and spoiling everything. So I think that is like a big hindrance toward like having these really memorable experiences and having this sense of mystery, is just the nature of our world at times. But I don't think that should look negatively upon the game itself.
Potentially. One thing I will say is that in a lot of modern open world games, they wouldn't do that. Most modern open world games are terrified of the player missing something. That's where you get Ubisoft Towers that fill your map with all the icons telling you exactly what's where, so you know exactly what you're going to get. Because modern developers are very scared of a player missing something. And that's a completely separate problem that has nothing to do with open world games. Is just that, to be fair, I get it to a point. Developers, you don't want to put a lot of work into something no one's going to find. So obviously you want to point out to people, hey, go there. There's something cool there. But whenever people talk about exploration in open world games, I'm often like, the map literally tells you where everything is in most of these. And these are like bad Ubisoft ones, so it's not really fair for me to, bring that up. But
to be fair, Ubisoft's been moving away from the towers, at least outside of Assassin's Creed.
I mean, that's good. Probably just because some open world games have come out and just not done that, and people have been really appreciative about it.
Yeah.
Like Elden Ring does not have that. Elden Ring, you can find like map pieces that fill in the topography, but you do not get like icons saying, hey, there's a special ruin here where you can get stuff. Those will show up when you discover those things, just so you can, remember where everything is. But it's not so blatant.
To be fair, though, I also don't think Elden Ring is a good example of an open world, because I remember at launch, a lot of people were getting locked out of content because they went to a place before going somewhere else. And they have no idea knowing that that's going to lock them out of something.
Well, okay, one, that's FromSoft in general. FromSoft likes to lock you out of stuff because fuck you. But Elden Ring was never actually that bad about it. You could pretty much go anywhere. Even I don't think there's maybe like one or two quest lines that you could totally cancel out, but I think you can still go to the areas and kill the bosses there. You just can't do the quest line, which the quest line doesn't really mean much in the grand scheme of things. I'll agree, Elden Ring is not even like that good. People liked it too much in terms of its open worldness. At a certain point, Elden Ring is a really cool game the first time you play it, because the first time you play it, you have no idea what you're going to find anywhere. It doesn't have those Ubisoft towers, so you really don't know what's going to be in this cave. The second time you play it, you know where everything is, so you know that 90% of the content is totally worthless to do, and it feels really bad. There's no point in going to this cave because its reward is a magic spell, and you're not playing an int character, so why would you go there? And it just feels really bad on second playthroughs. That game has other issues that have nothing to do with its open world. And its open world, just like the best parts of that game are the legacy dungeons. And the legacy dungeons are the areas of the game that are very similar to like Dark Souls 1 and like the other Dark Souls games. And all I would want from Elden Ring is to cut out the open world, make a few more legacy dungeons and staple them together. Basically make Dark Souls 1, because that was Dark Souls 1 Interconnected World is so much better than any open world I've ever played. Fuck open fields. You put an open field, I'm kind of bored. I hate it. If I see an open field, I'm not happy.
I think it depends on the context of the open field, because if it's a game like Twilight Princess, that open field gets used for like horseback fights and like weird stuff like that. Or like at various points, I know it like sets the stage for various boss fights, and the last boss fight, if I remember correctly.
Perfectly honest, I don't consider most like 3D Zelda games to be like open world games.
Oh no, me neither.
So like Hyrule Field and stuff is a very different scenario. It is just a traversal field for the most part, but yeah, Twilight Princess has a few cool boss fights in it, just where they need an open space for you to horseback ride. And thus, I see their purpose, and they don't intrude on my gameplay too much, so that doesn't really bother me.
I do think that Breath of the Wild could use a bit more of that idea of gameplay, of just like, I don't know, missions that require you to fight something while like on horseback or something. There's like only one fight that does that, and it's the last fight in the game, and it's really ass.
Yeah, I was going to say, but what about that final boss? It was so cool.
It was so bad.
I think in terms of horses in general, Breath of the Wild was designed so poorly for them, because most of the game is you exploring, and a lot of places to explore, you have to climb. You can't even use a horse. So it feels so unnecessary. I ran around for the entire game.
Shield surfing was infinitely funner as well.
That's true.
Like, shield surfing was just naturally something. Like, once you learn to do it for the first time, it's like on every repeat play. Oh, I've only replayed it once, but just like from the start, I'd constantly want to shield surf.
They should have just given us a skateboard. Like, we should have just had a skateboard we can just get on anytime. It'd be like shield surfing, but we could just, we could do it uphill a little bit. Why not? It'd be way better than a horse. And then you wouldn't have to like babysit the horse. Like, you wouldn't have to leave it and call it. You could just press a button and Link would pull out his fucking skateboard.
You know what they should have done is actually like have a secondary use for the Deku leaf, where you could just push yourself forward with that shit while you're on the shield.
Okay, I like it. Yeah, you blow backwards and it pushes you
back
forward.
and it just boosts forward. Yeah, I do personally love a great open world aesthetic. Obviously, like I haven't had a lot of open worlds that I've loved, but a game like Brütal Legend immediately comes to mind when I think of aesthetic. Even if like technically traversing that open world was a giant pain in the ass because there was no jump button, which was an inherently flawed feature of that game. But like seeing all the weird heavy metal inspiration and like the faces in the rocks and all these murals and all these weird heavy metal inspired shit, that to me was a really cool open world because I liked seeing the cool shit, and often the game would reward me for seeing cool shit or going around and seeing these weird, interesting heavy metal inspired like regions of the world. And that's also a game where you could miss most of it. I guess, yeah, you're like people who designed that game would fucking hate people like you, nameless guest, because you can just completely ignore all of that and complete the game in like maybe 7 hours because it's completely unnecessary. Yeah, I don't know. On one hand, I would say like I like that open world a lot, but it's also like really superfluous. That game is also really superfluous in general, but it's a really cool game. I don't know.
I mean, that's just a weird game in general.
Yes.
It seemed like they wanted to make 3 different games and
Yes.
jammed it together into this weird RTS that you also get a car and can drive around the heavy metal worlds, and you have action combat.
Everything you're saying is awesome to me, for the record.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
That's fucking sweet, dude.
To be fair, like Tim Schafer himself admitted that they should have, because it started as an RTS, and he admitted they should have ditched the RTS and just gone all in on the heavy metal GTA.
Yeah, it actually probably would have been better if it was just like an action game, open world thing than the RTS makes it very unique. I'll give it that. It's a very unique game, and no one can take that away from it. And maybe that
Big Rigs is also unique.
Whoa.
I said Big Rigs is also unique.
It's also an open world game. You can go anywhere in the world.
Well, that comes the term open world is like almost pretty nebulous at this point. Does anything with like just open areas, is that an open world game?
No.
Because I hear people claim a lot of things are open world games, and it's weird. Like, are old RPGs where you have world maps open world games? They're not. That's stupid.
No, because that's an overworld. No, it's where you've got like one large.
I know. I'm not actually asking the question. I'm just saying that like someone could interpret what is an open world to be very different between different people.
Do we want to define what we all collectively think is an open world here?
Can we have like an open world game alignment chart where Chaotic Evil is like Super Mario Brothers 3 is an open world game?
So, would you call the open field sections in Sword and Shield like open world sections?
The wild area is trying to emulate an open world feel to it. The game itself is not like an open world game since it's largely still about segmented routes and stuff, which I actually like. I'm not sure I actually want open world Pokemon. I kind of like a well-crafted route. Sword and Shield does not have well-crafted routes, but, you know, they could have been well-crafted in a better timeline. I don't know. What I would generally consider an open world is it's a game that's focused on its large, expansive, like, play spaces. This could mean that there are, like, 3 different, like, large zones that you play in, that maybe there is a loading screen between them, but as long as like the core of the game is still about being in those big zones and playing within them, that seems open world to me.
Nameless guest, you've spent a lot of time shitting on open worlds, but I'm just curious, how do you feel about Xenoblade Chronicles X's open world?
Xenoblade Chronicles X, it's actually been a while since I played it, but I would say that largely its open world was very pretty, and it was a Wii U game and it was actually quite pretty, which was kind of weird actually.
Yeah.
It was actually pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But the open world is not what I remember about that game. What I remember about that game is the side quests and the combat and the overall story. I don't really have much memory about just wandering around forests. It stopped being that interesting outside of I could potentially find new quests in it.
What I remember most about that game is just the level 80s outside of the fucking starting area.
Well, that's Xenoblade in general. They all do that. And that is something I do like about it, is that like a lot of if it's an open world RPG, it'll either have level scaling everywhere, which just renders leveling to be useless anyway. So, great, kind of ruin the point of an RPG. Or like the beginning areas are really boring after like 10 minutes of playing because you've already over-leveled everything there. And Xenoblade does do a cool thing of just, like, oh yeah, we have this random super boss in the first area because fuck you. Come back later. And I like it. It's a cool little concept.
It makes it all feel wild. It is nature.
Yeah.
Unfucking tameable. It's untamable. Of course, nature doesn't give a fuck about you. And if you're smart, you'll avoid the level 80 and not pick fights with it. I always loved that element to those games where it's like, yeah, I'll just be like going on my way to a mission, and all of a sudden, out of fuck nowhere, there's a level 120 aggroed towards me as I'm. God, that was like the scariest part of Xenoblade Chronicles X. Oh my god. Just like going through the water, and then this fucking level 120 mech just aggroes to me, and I'm like running my ass off to get to the other end.
That was a good game. That's my favorite Xenoblade game. I haven't finished any of the others, but I have finished X, and it was excellent.
Oof.
That was not meant to be a pun. That was not meant to be a pun, but I made it anyway. I am excellent, damn it.
He can make jokes about this too. Okay, so
that game has great music. Everyone should go and look up the battle theme. It's a beauty.
It actually is. On a whole different plane. All right, so do you think you'd ever like what would these games have to like do to make you like their open worlds?
Well, okay. First off, I'll say that I've liked many open world games, but it's rarely because of the open world itself. It's generally due to something else in it. But generally, game companies need to stop focusing on making it really big. It needs to stop being so big. It needs to be a little more condensed, or actually a lot more condensed. Because, I don't know, I don't find it fun to run across a field after a while. It's boring. It doesn't matter how pretty the field is after a while. It's like, oh, okay, I have to get here. I have to get to all the way on the other side of the map. And the closest fast travel point is still like a 2-minute walk away from the actual thing I want to do. So I still have to waste 2 minutes to get there. So I don't really know. I think they need to make these worlds small. If there's going to be a fast travel system, it's got to be generous. And give me good traversal options. I need to actually feel like I'm having fun while I'm moving.
I will 100% agree with you on the traversal options. Any fucking open world game needs something to speed that shit up or have it be fun on your destination. But I do think I fundamentally disagree with you on getting to that initial fast travel point. I think that taking in the landscape and just running to a destination and seeing what you find on the way there in itself can be fun. And I think that might just be a difference of what we're looking for in games.
For future reference, I'm not saying that isn't fun. I'm saying that stops being fun pretty quickly. At a certain point, I really stopped caring about that. I liked the open world of Breath of the Wild for quite a while before I just was like, I don't want to do anything but shrine. None of this matters anymore. Just let me get to the shrine. I lose patience with the open world too quickly. And part of that is literally just that they're too big. And everyone's always pushing how big their open world is. That's the market. That's like the marketing ploy. Is go like, our world is bigger than Skyrim. Actually, it's bigger than regular Earth landmass. And it's like, great. I'm sure that it's filled with such great content and isn't totally copy-pasted everywhere.
I will say that like there are some missions in some open world games that do take advantage of that feeling of just like how big the city is. There are a couple ending missions of Infamous where you're like blowing up blimps, I believe. And it's like a lot of it's like you're in the sky or some shit. You're like trying to stay afloat while like blowing up blimps. I swear this isn't a fever dream. I know this happens in at least one of the Infamous games. I love it when the missions take advantage of that and you're racing across it.
Basically, I
Okay.
think my end point is just that I find a lot of open world games are focused on the quantity of what's there instead of the quality of what it is. I would prefer to have, a smaller world with less random crap in it, but more interesting crap. Like, I want good, handcrafted, interesting things as opposed to 20 copy-pasted bandit camps, which is what a lot of these things do.
Oh god, I recently started playing The Witcher 3 again. How many fucking times do you have to kill bandits on that open world?
Yeah, The Witcher 3, I like The Witcher 3. It's a good game, but the parts I like about it are the quests, like the interesting voiced quests and stuff, not walking into a bandit camp and killing everyone. That's quite boring, and I'm not into it.
There's something kind of funny thing about it. I know one of your favorite games is Borderlands 2, which a lot of people would consider an open world game. Now, do you like that kind of open world, or is it you like it in spite of the open world? So I know you put an ungodly amount of hours into it.
I think that's in spite of, for me personally.
That's probably in spite of. To be perfectly honest, the main thing I like about Borderlands 2 is just the combat.
Yeah.
I like shooting enemies, I like getting guns, and I like leveling up. That's the fun part about Borderlands 2 for me. I enjoy some of the quest writings. I know that, like, you're apparently a smooth-brained idiot if you enjoy the writing of Borderlands, but I like some of them. They occasionally get a good hit. A lot of it is pretty crap, but yeah, that's kind of what I like about Borderlands. I don't go to Borderlands because I'm like, oh, I want to explore this brave, interesting alien planet. I don't really care.
Dude, every time we're on like a open world section of Borderlands, what do we immediately do? Do we run to a abandoned camp? Fuck no. We find the nearest car and we drive our ass to the next objective.
Yeah.
Like, in that case, like, I almost have to wonder, like, how much is lost if Borderlands is just like a series of dungeons that you select off a menu.
Yeah, if they were really well crafted dungeons, I would almost prefer it. Actually, I think I would prefer it if they were just like a fairly large, intricate dungeon with maybe some like bonus side paths. I think it could be pretty fun. But a lot of Borderlands spaces are just big.
Y'all are basically
big and empty,
like describing Tiny Tina's.
Yeah, Tiny Tina's was good. Yeah. I beat it.
Just to clarify, Borderlands is not an open world game.
Yeah, I know it's not really, but it has large open areas.
Yeah,
it's a hub world, but yeah, they're pretty large and open.
There's large open areas, and Bryn got a little confused. Forgive him.
Okay, a lot of people would call Borderlands 2 an open world game.
That's okay. They can be wrong.
Yeah, I'm looking up the fucking Steam page for Borderlands 2 right
now. See
now.
if people tag it.
He needs validation. He needs it.
And if not, you're gonna tag it open world.
Yeah, it's a hub world. Same thing as like Deus Ex Human Revolution is a hub world, not an open world. It's just the levels are very replayable, and there's
actually Deus Ex Human Revolution. I haven't really played the original Deus Ex. I really should. I always hear it's amazing.
The original's great.
Yeah, but I've played Human Revolution, and I really like its like open, like map town areas. They're pretty small, pretty condensed, but there's like a decent amount of stuff to do in them. There's fun side quests. There's a lot of little corners to look into and secret passages to find. It's all generally really well made and stuff. It's like way better than putting me in a desert that has a volcano in it. Woo.
Yeah.
Maybe there's like a pretty rock formation somewhere.
I think if you're doing something like Grand Theft Auto, for example, or Elder Scrolls, where you really need the open world to sell, this universe and to sell this world, I can understand doing it. But I feel like so many open world games would do better with just multiple large hub worlds that are more densely packed with stuff to do.
Yeah,
I feel
I
like
could agree
that
with
design would work better for so many games. And just way
Like-
too many open world games. You know, they go for this like 200-hour experience, but if they condense that to 40 or 50 hours, which is what Obsidian did it with the Outer Worlds, and it's a far better experience that way.
Yeah, I played Outer Worlds. I beat it. It's a good game. It's not like amazing or anything, but it was good. It's better than most of the Fallout games I've played. I don't like any of the Fallout games.
Yeah, because it doesn't overstay its welcome. Right?
Yeah, no, I finished it. I did like a whole bunch of side quests. I never felt like I was really missing anything throughout it. It was a decent little experience. It's nothing amazing. I'm not gonna like tell people to go out and buy Outer Worlds, but you know, it was fun. I liked it.
One thing though, it doesn't have Big Iron in it, unlike Fallout New Vegas, and for that, buy New Vegas instead.
I really love New Vegas. I had a lot of fun playing it. I really liked the world better than most of the other Fallout stuff I've played. I haven't played 1 or 2, but like compared to 3 or 4, and it's really like this fun experience. And unlike a lot of other Bethesda games, I noticed with it that I wasn't having to mod it quite as much after that initial run through to kind of find enjoyment in it anymore. I know I ran
Yeah.
into that a bit with Skyrim. After I've played through most of it more than a couple times, I wanted to mod the hell out of it. And the main reason I've never beaten it is because Bethesda. So some of those mods are to fix Bethesda's mess. What's funny is that like the fourth main entry in I guess there's other main entries in Elder Scrolls, but Oblivion was another one that I really liked when it came out. When I came out, I thought it was like this mysterious, kind of amazing thing. And it's kind of funny. I have these nostalgic memories for both Oblivion and New Vegas, which is the true Fallout 4 in my opinion.
That's the true Fallout 3.
True. Really?
Yeah,
True.
I would say that New Vegas is the one I liked the best out of the Fallout games. I still couldn't really get too into it because it's really janky. Like Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3 are really janky, and I just like shooting kind of felt bad. I didn't really enjoy myself, but it was definitely the better of the 3 I played. I also haven't played 1 or 2. Most people haven't, I think.
Yeah, most people haven't.
So we're in a very unique position right now where we are actually seeing a fucking horrible open world game right before it releases, in the process of crashing and burning in slow motion. Of course, I'm referring to Sonic Frontiers, where it's gonna be so bad, so fucking bad.
No, Kaz, it was just a tech demo. That wasn't the real game.
No. Cope and seethe more, my friend. No, it's like before this game even comes out, I feel like there's a list we could make of everything wrong with it. Like it's just combat is ass. Sonic feels slow, which is fucking weird.
I've seen the trailers and stuff. I'm kind of holding off judgment until it actually comes out. I think
So you're
I've
the one
seen
coping, okay?
let me fucking finish. What I've seen does not instill confidence. It is very concerning, and in my opinion, there are other projects that have come out this year from fan groups that serve to be a better celebration of the series than both it and the other Sonic game that came out this year, but that's a topic for an entirely different day. I am very concerned that it is not going to work out, and they just followed a trend, which I've noticed a lot of games are just doing, is like, Breath of the Wild did really, really good. People love how that game is. Let's just make RIP Breath of the Wild now. And I don't think that works for every character, and it's really difficult to make a character like Sonic work in an open world like that.
Especially if you don't have the speed.
Yeah.
I
The
know
one thing the one thing I really disliked from the Sonic Frontier stuff is just it was boring looking. Like it felt like some Unreal Engine basic assets that they just plopped Sonic into.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I don't know if you might remember, but back like towards the end of the 3, or even during the 360 and PS3 generation, you'd occasionally see, or even now, you'll see like Mario rendered in Unreal Engine 4. And it would be this like hyper-realistic landscape with like this super HD Mario model. And it just felt like one of those mock-ups was turned into an entire game.
Where's the level design, boys? It's another fucking open field.
Just because Sonic moves fast, if it was actually done well, maybe it could be fun, just because traversal would be quick and maybe even fun. But Sonic does not look fast in that. The environments look kind of shitty. And then it just randomly has magical floating grind rails everywhere for no reason. It would be better if they were like ancient ruins that happened to have things that Sonic could grind on, as opposed to pure metal grind rails.
Here's the thing. We were far closer on multiple occasions to a better Sonic open world experience, at least in terms of hub worlds. You can go back to Sonic Adventure in 98. It has a really decent... It's not true open world, but it is a good hub. The hub worlds make for a good proof of concept on what a Sonic open world game could be, and having an open world divide the acts and stuff, I think could be very interesting. If you go even further back, there's Sonic Jam, which had an open world to get to the different games, which is still a hub world, but it's freaking, I think, 96, so I'm going to cut it a bit of slack. I think it can be done. I'm just not sure this game's going to do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that open world Sonic is a concept that, you just totally throw it in the trash, never look at it. It could work. Maybe, again, just because he's fast, maybe it could actually be kind of fun. Just because traversal might be fun. As the way it looks right now, I don't think so. I think that game's going to crash and burn.
What confuses me, why not put Sonic in a big city with, City Escape's a good example to use, but put him in a big open city with rails to grind on all over the place that would be naturally there.
Because buildings are fucking harder to make, Rin, than fucking open-ass landscapes. That takes effort. It's a lot of effort for all them buildings.
Well, if you copy-paste the buildings enough, you could make a pretty low-effort city.
And on top of it, there are plenty of early to mid 2000s games that were making open worlds with the equivalent of a box of scraps.
Spider-Man for the PS1.
Spider-Man for the PS1.
Mine.
Hulk Ultimate Destruction. It is a open world Hulk game where one of the big things is you just destroy the city. You can smash up buildings, you knock over buildings. Like, I'm sure that game didn't have a massive budget behind it. This is right after the Hulk movie had come out and before superhero movies were kind of actually a thing again. So I'm sure the budget wasn't very big for it. You have this Hulk game come out, and it is really fun and clearly a shoestring budget city game. Obviously, I'm not saying that Sonic would work in that kind of environment, but I think it could be done, and it could be done well while still not being so expensive and hard to do that you're over-stressing the development team. Something has to give. It would obviously be smaller, but that's okay if it means that it's not just a bunch of floating rails in space, like open space, which is what I've seen from Frontiers. I keep wanting to call it Forces.
I keep wanting to call it the Forgotten World.
I'm curious if Forces will be the better game. Like, will Frontiers be worse than Forces?
I wonder if Frontiers is just going to be like ridiculously long with nothing to do as a response to Forces being like 2 hours long.
At least in Forces, I got to create my own Sonic OC, and that was hilarious.
Refund this, assholes. Oh, they totally will. Oh, fuck.
Well, I mean, we still haven't actually answered the question that we're here for, which is what makes a good open world.
Personally, it's a world that's worth exploring. I'm obviously going to have to go back to Breath of the Wild, but it's with that game, it's the aesthetic, it's landmarks, it's finding those shrines, and then there's like the little things, like finding the little Korok puzzles, or finding that one rock that seems out of place, and it's like that little part of the world like kind of piques your curiosity and it rewards you for finding those little things. Now, obviously, that's a giant pain in the ass for completionists who didn't go to like one random mountain in like the far right corner of the map and didn't find the last Korok seed. But I still think that that world is just still kind of amazing. At the very least, it kept my interest as a person who isn't really usually into exploring open worlds for fucking like 60 hours. In summation, a world that's worth exploring. If if I can look at a world, find gameplay, and like find reasons that I want to go into that world and get something from it between objectives, then to me that world is worth more than having a menu in front of me. And obviously part of that is like I want the rewards from this open world to have like a positive impact on gameplay. Like Korok seeds let me hold more weapons, and that's also great when I'm going through the world fighting camps and, you know, just pack ratting a shit ton of equipment. But,
Yeah, I think that's an apt concept of what the perfect open world is. And I think the thing is that sadly this is a situation where I think the answer is going to be different for everyone, because I know in my case I like just the part of exploring where you find silly things, or you might find this little piece, like maybe not even a reward, but it's, hey, you went over here and there's nothing really over here, but here's this interesting bit of lore to further like flesh out this world, to further the storytelling. I think that's super cool. I love stuff like that. I love for like this long adventure and finally coming in the clearing and like finding the next city or something. And it's like, man, like I can finally save. I can finally, you know, move on to the next thing. I like the sense of adventure to it. I like
there is something to be said for environmental storytelling. I also think that finding stuff like, I don't know, not even journals, but like I know Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas have tons of little areas that just tell a story by walking through them. You can just see how these people lived, well, when people lived there, and you can make your own assumptions about those people and those characters.
Yeah, that's true.
or like some games where you show up and it's clear that something's already happened, like either long before you came there or
Mhm.
shortly before you got there, where like you enter a city and everyone's been killed.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, what the hell happened here? And it doesn't explain it to you. You kind of just pick it up based on like what's going on around you, and maybe like visual cues on what might have like how it might have gone down. I really
Yeah.
love stuff like that, or just nods to like the history of a series. The Spider-Man games are really good at that, where it'll nod to like, I think it's a freaking given that if a Spider-Man game comes out somewhere, you'll hear the 1960s Spider-Man theme song playing, so, like as an Easter egg.
Yeah, and you know, obviously environmental storytelling isn't like exclusive to open worlds, but it makes them feel lived in. And
Yeah.
that's obviously a very important part of wanting to spend 60, 80, 100 hours in this world, is that you want to feel connected to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The last thing you want in an open world game is it to feel like this soulless, empty, basically giant ghost town with a couple robots to talk to. Like, the best way I could describe it is like the worst open worlds are where it feels like you opened a large Gmod map and put some NPCs down.
That's Fallout 76, bro.
Yeah.
What I would say, like a big thing that open world games need to do, is I need to feel like I'm not wasting my time. I find a lot of open world games, because they're so big, because there's so much copy pasted bullshit, I just feel eventually that like I'm wasting my time. Give me the interesting stuff, because this uninteresting stuff is just padding. I don't like padding. If your game is just filled with, you know, the same bandit camp over and over again, basically the same cave like 50 times, and the only thing at the end of it is kind of nothing, I don't know. The game just feels like it's wasting my time, and I'm not into it.
For you, what makes a good open world game would be quality over quantity.
There needs to be quality content within the worlds. Unfortunately, a lot of people just go like, I want to buy one game, and that's the only game I'm going to play this year, and I'm going to spend 500 hours in it. And thus, they want a lot of stuff. And thus, a lot of that stuff is crap. And then combine that with a lot of open world games are just like weird checklist simulators where you're just filling out all the checklists. That gets kind of tedious in its own way. I need to feel like there was some kind of effort put into the stuff that's actually going on. And a lot of open world games I don't feel are putting in that effort. And I mean, like, that even applies to games that I like. Like, Elden Ring has this problem a lot. There's a lot of copy-pasted bullshit, and I feel like I'm wasting my time a lot when I play it.
If you look at a game and you look at an area and you ask yourself, does the developer give a shit about this area? And if you think that answer is no, then why should you?
Yeah.
The funny thing is that even the smallest of things can really change how an area is remembered or how an aspect of a game is remembered. Like, just the aesthetic alone, a lot of the time, can really change how someone might feel about a game. Like, if we look at the Grand Theft Auto series, because they are the open world game, I think.
Yeah.
Like, if someone says open world game, that's the first thing you come to.
Actually, I would disagree nowadays. Yeah, that was definitely like an old answer.
Best selling.
What I would imagine right now, if someone told me about, like, to imagine an open world game, I would imagine Horizon, like Zero Dawn
What
or
the fuck?
Forbidden
Why?
West, because it's shit.
Well, yeah.
That's what I
the
imagine.
fucking world is so static.
I imagine big, empty, like, nature and being bored.
I think you might be alone in that assessment,
Yeah, I think
but
you're
all right.
projecting a little bit. Anyway,
I don't imagine fucking GTA anymore.
Anyway, my point being, you don't hear a lot of people bring up Grand Theft Auto 4 these days. Because it is a very gray and brown game that, like, it had some memes and stuff, but it's not brought up as much as, like, Vice City or San Andreas. People still love Vice City. And it is one of the weaker games in terms of, like, gameplay these days just because it's dated. There's not, like, no one can hold back the hands of time especially with an open world game. But the aesthetic goes such a long way towards helping that game stand out. San Andreas as well, I think, and why when San Andreas in particular got remastered, all the soul was sucked out of the aesthetic of the game, and I think it's part of why people got so mad about it, other than, like, all the other equally valid reasons. Aesthetic goes such a long way towards helping create this memorable open world that you want to explore, that you want to get lost in for a little while, that you want to just get together with friends when you're kids and drive around in San Andreas or Vice City and cause chaos because it's so cool, you know?
Aesthetic is the reason I still think about Brütal Legend and how, like, that music that I loved just translated onto the screen. Even if that game is 3 different games mashed into one and it loses focus by the end. I'll never forget that open world. It's incredible to me. But yeah, absolutely. So yes, aesthetic is huge. But Pork Chopper, what do you think makes a great open world game?
I think there are 4 really important things that most games get wrong. So the first thing is the world needs to feel alive. It needs to feel like it's lived in. If it's a fantasy game and there's a village, right, you should see people hunting and fishing around that village. At night, you should see guards, patrolling around that area, not just at the gate, because realistically, they would never, just sit there.
Yeah.
If it's a city, right, traffic should be horrible at rush hour. You should see people going for lunch at noon, after 8 o'clock. Something like a movie theater should have a fucking lineup outside, and the traffic should be god awful. And that doesn't sound like it's good for gameplay, but it makes it feel real, right? And I enjoy seeing that in games.
Low key, you're sounding like the type of guy that liked the horse nuts in Red Dead Redemption 2 shrink when it entered water.
I read about that, and no, that was a little weird.
I mean, if you're feeling like a psychopath, a whole bunch of people lining up in a movie theater could be a lot of fun.
No, like for me, it's just it's the little details like that are really important.
Sure.
And also the the atmosphere, right? Something like San Andreas actually felt like early 90s. Everything from the music to the clothing people wore to the cars that they drove really kind of set the stage, and it made it actually feel like the 90s. And I remember the 90s, right? I remember growing up, and that's exactly how it was. Atmosphere goes a super long way to making an open world feel like it's not just this drab thing where they, plopped in buildings and shit. You need a design or a layout that promotes fun and interesting gameplay possibilities. Sunset Overdrive is a really great example. Around every corner, there's some crazy and fun shit going on. Every power line is something where you've got these like boots where you can basically grind like a skateboarder across the power lines to traverse the city really, really quickly, and it's fucking awesome. It's almost like the grinding in Infamous.
Yeah.
That's super important. And then you need the world to be densely packed. And I think that's the major thing games get wrong. Something I love about Yakuza and Kamurocho, for example, it's a small city. You can go from one side to the other in a relatively quick amount of time, but from start to finish, I don't get bored of the city because there's so much stuff to do and there's so many places to see and visit.
It just feels like a city. Like, even with all those NPCs walking around, like, the way they act and the way they act when you bump into them and stuff, like,
Exactly. It feels real.
you're living in Kamurocho.
Yeah, I think those four things, they're super important to get right. And most open world games, because I've played a lot of them, and they usually go for one or two, and then they forget everything else. And then you wonder why these games are the way that they are. Just the developers don't seem to put enough time and enough care into the world that they're actually making. A lot of them, they build their game worlds procedurally now. And no shit, they're fucking boring.
Well, like I said towards the beginning of the podcast, we kind of found out why we can't necessarily... Like, it's obviously better than back in the 90s, but Daggerfall, where, you
Fuck
could
that
walk
game.
for... You could literally walk for a year and not find another city.
260,000 square kilometers. Fuck that.
Crazy.
All procedurally generated.
Yeah, there's a reason we don't do shit like that anymore.
Like, it's something that I think it can help in places. I think if it's like if you're gonna have a massive open world, something has to give. Otherwise, you're gonna just spend like infinite money.
Yeah.
And I think using it to maybe fill in a couple spaces here and there where you just have a gap between more landmark areas, as long as you go in afterwards and make sure it's actually tuned to actually feel like a part of this world, I think it can be used very well, like any tool. However, I think a lot of times it gets leaned on very heavily as almost a crutch to try and, well, we need this map to be 10 times bigger than the last game. Let's have it all procedurally generated. And then you end up with something that isn't as well thought out, isn't as enjoyable.
Yeah.
Oh, and Horizon is what I think of when I think of open world.
Oh,
But
piss off!
But I think it's because I'm splitting them in my mind, because I'm thinking there's like wilderness open worlds where you're in like a big wide open like forests, deserts crap, and there's city open world, which is like what GTA is,
Yeah.
and those are very different. And Horizon is definitely what I think of when I'm thinking of like the wilderness open world, like what Assassin's Creed has been doing lately. Assassin's Creed does have cities, but a lot of it nowadays is in pretty open wilderness areas. And it's like, there's a pointless leveling system. There's a million icons on the map. You like spend your whole time wandering around doing pointless busy work to upgrade your equipment. And it's just boring, and it's like playing it safe the whole time. That game is super boring and not interesting. And I am right, and fuck you.
All right, that's how you. I mean, I guess the reason I don't think about it is just because like every time
we're getting
Horizon,
more. Yeah, Horizon always comes out right before a better open world game comes out. What I was saying when I said it was like the quintessential, I meant like it was generic. Like it is like the basic. It's doing everything. It's not doing it well, but it's doing everything.
That's why I don't think it.
I would say that the most basic one is Assassin's Creed.
Horizon is Assassin's Creed with robot dinosaurs. They're the same game.
I'm sure there's an Assassin's Creed with robot dinosaurs. There
One
has to be
day.
by this
Not
point.
yet. There's a Far Cry with robot dinosaurs, Blood Dragon.
Oh, that was fucking sick. Oh yeah, that was also an open world. What the fuck?
Yeah, and Far Cry is a little more like in that style.
Right,
It's
true.
first person. That's what I was saying on Quintessence. It like encompasses everything that open world games are doing, and it's also encompassing everything that open world games are doing wrong. That's what I'm getting at there. I'm not thinking of the pinnacle of it. I'm thinking of, the example I would point to, maybe.
I will say, as much as I loved Blood Dragon, I didn't feel the need to really explore the world. I just kind of wanted to get from checkpoint to checkpoint, killing bases and stuff like that. Like, I wanted to get to the next set piece. And,
that was a much smaller and more condensed experience, right?
It is.
Yeah, so, which, honestly, I think probably would make it more fun than just Far Cry 3 for me, maybe. I never played Blood Dragon. Aesthetic-wise, it's hilarious and awesome, so that helps.
Far Cry 3 was really good, but
It was. I did.
Blood Dragon is a lot more memorable to me, just because, the aesthetic, the world, and everything, and it's a much more condensed experience.
Yeah, like I didn't finish Far Cry 3. Like I got pretty far, but especially after the memorable villain died, I really stopped caring. Because I was like, oh boy, I get to liberate another 5 camps. Woot.
Yeah, that was a big mistake.
Okay.
All right, we had some fun talking about some open world games, what we like and what we don't like. I think overall, there is no perfect open world game for everyone, but there's probably an open world game that you'll like out there. Or you can be completely jaded like the unnamed guest.
You call it being jaded. I call it being correct.
You can check us out on Twitter at THNDRCLUB. We're also on Twitch at twitch.tv/ThunderClub. We have been Thunder Club, and thank you for watching. See you guys later. Thanks.
Change the open world. My final message. Goodbye.